Very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 7th installment of the NGPA Up in the Air webinar series. My name is Brian Gambino, president of the NGPA, and here with my favorite vice president, Troy. How's it going?
Your only vice president, I hope. I'm great. How are you, Brian?
I just wanted to make you feel good about yourself. You threw me under the bus a couple of Up in the Air webinars ago saying I was your problem child. So
I know. I'm sorry. Still living it. Still living it. Still living that down.
Still living it down. Still living it down. We're going to go with that. But thank you so much to everyone who is joining us here. If you haven't been with us before, our NGPA Up in the Air webinar series, a play on words for us here. There's so much that's up in the air right now that has been for over a year now as the world has battled the COVID-19 pandemic. Normally, we would have met with the NGPA at our Industry Expo event back in Palm Springs last month. That's when it would have been, to meet with tons of sponsoring companies, to meet with lots of other industry partners who were eager and ready to meet with all of our attendees, to talk about possible jobs at those companies, to talk about products and services that their companies offered within the aviation space. But unfortunately, obviously, due to the pandemic, large scale gatherings still not going to be happening for quite some time. So here we are, we're coming straight to your Zoom screens in our Up in the Air webinar series, dealing with a lot of these airlines, a lot of these other companies in regards to the pandemic era challenges that are facing them, how they're tackling the pandemic head on, how they are maneuvering their businesses to best get through these interesting times, as well as their hopes for recovery. Once recovery does take full hold, how they're going to recover and what their outlook will be for bringing new talent into their companies as they exit these pandemic times. So we've had some great webinars in the past. Hopefully you've caught some of them. If you haven't, you can check them out at www.ngpa.org/up in the air. We have all of our recordings of our past 6 webinars, as well as available on a podcast. You can check out NGPA podcast. You can search that on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or the Pandora platform to check into all of that great content that we've been bringing you. Not only has it been a rough time for aviation companies, it's been a rough time for nonprofit organizations as well. NGPA, we are a fully accredited 501c3 nonprofit organization who provides advocacy services across our membership. We provide scholarship programs to our members as well. And we do our best to fulfill our mission as an organization to build, support, and unite the LGBTQ community worldwide. And we need some of your help with that as well. All of these webinars here at NGPA, we are putting on for free to bring these companies direct to your screen. But we would love it if you can help us out by becoming a member of NGPA. We welcome everyone to be part of our membership ranks here, whether you identify as LGBTQ+ or you're an ally. We love our ally members. They are such a strong force for the LGBTQ community. And we'd love to have you as a member. Membership starts at $20 for students, $49 a year for individual members, and $79 for family members. And it comes with a whole slew of benefits and services. And we'd love if you can join us and help support our mission. You can do that by going to our website, ngpa.org. In the top middle, you'll see Join Now. We'd love to have you as an NGPA member. Also, if you're not interested in becoming a member, but maybe you could make a small donation to the organization, you can do that too. You can text the word NGPA to the number 44321. You can do it right now. You'll get a link back right away to send a donation in our direction to help support our mission, help support our services, just like our Up in the Air webinar series like this. Also, OBAP and Women in Aviation, some of our peer organizations that could really use your support as well. You may have seen them in the starting out slides there. Go check out their websites and also become members of those organizations as well and support nonprofits through what is a really tough time as we battle this pandemic. So Troy is going to really kick it off for our feature company today, and that's Delta Airlines. Troy, I'll kick it off to you.
Thanks, Brian. So Brian told me yesterday, he goes, I want you to talk about the history of Delta. And I'm like, well, that's a task. So then I started thinking, well, what about Delta do people not already know? And so I did some snooping around. And if you've ever been to Atlanta, you may have seen the Delta Air Museum, which is a very cool air museum. Well, they have a really cool website. So I started doing some digging around. So some quick facts about Delta. Delta is headquartered here in Atlanta, which is, I thought that's kind of obvious. So what else can we learn about Delta? Founded in 1925. They have 300 destinations in 50 countries, and they serve 200 million passengers a year. I'm pretty familiar with Delta. I've seen Delta my whole career. My partner actually works at Delta, flies for Delta. So Delta is a big part of my life. But I started digging around. I'm like, well, when did Delta get into jet flying? And so that's when I found my virtual background, which is the DC-8. DC-8, Douglas made the DC-8 in 1950, the late 1950s, and Delta was the launch customer in 1959. They actually flew the airplane from Long Beach to Miami to bring the airplane into service. And it was the fastest recorded flight between Southern California and Miami, Florida, at just under 5 hours, like 4 hours, 45 minutes. Then they brought it up to Atlanta to get it ready to start flying. And the Atlanta airport had to install something brand new to the Atlanta airport, which was a jetway, a jet bridge. It was one of the first ones in Atlanta for the DC-8, 1959. Then they introduced the airplane into service on their first route from New York to Atlanta, so a route I am intimately familiar with as I commute between that city all the time. I have more hours flying between those two cities than I probably care to admit.
And it's the bane of your work existence.
Bane
right?
of my work existence. Sitting in the back of an airplane, going back and forth between New York and Atlanta. And they actually, the cool thing I learned today when I was doing a little bit of reading about Delta was that the widget that we are all familiar with Delta Airlines was introduced in the late 50s as they brought in their DC-8, their jet service. So the widget we all see today was part of their, I don't know, you can see it here if I scroll up, it's the Royal Jet Service was the motto Delta used to introduce jet travel. And that's when they started using the widget as well. So I thought it was a cool little historical fact about Delta, but that's just a history anecdote. I don't know. I thought it
I like that. What a good president I am telling you to do the history, because that's a good story. I knew you were going to come up with something just absolutely incredible. So well done, Trey.
It's cool.
You can stick around.
I got to be honest. One of the things that has gotten me like through the pandemic, in a lot of downtime, I've not been flying very much this year, has been diving into history, whether it's American history or Civil War or some world history. I've like researched my entire family lineage, and I really enjoyed learning just like little tidbits about airlines and things that you didn't know in the past about airlines. So that was pretty cool. So if you're ever interested in learning a little bit more about Delta, visit the Delta History Museum. Their website has a lot of great information about the airline on there, so you can read there. And if you get a chance, visit the Delta Museum here. But I'm going to start introducing our team here from Delta. We're going to move on to business. We've got some great people here, some folks that I've only met for the first time today, and then I've got some folks here that I've known for a while personally. With us today is Kevin Mason, manager of the Delta Propel program. They'll talk a little bit about the Propel program, but that is their one of their pathway cadet programs that they have. We have Eob McConan, who is the manager of pilot selection. And Eob is a good friend of mine. I've known Eob for a while now. And with us as well today, and who's going to start us off in our presentation, is the Vice President of Flight Operations and the System Chief Pilot for Delta Airlines, Captain Patrick Burns. And you guys are welcome to join us whenever you're ready with your cameras there. We'll get your presentation linked up. Patrick, how are you doing today?
I'm well, but you went through my whole presentation. I mean, just delete the first 9 slides and then we can just,
I want to know more about the first jet bridge and whose idea it was to like build some fangled thing and connect it to an airplane like that.
Yeah, you know, you're not supposed to put me on the spot like this. Come on, Troy, you're killing me. We're just getting started. No, it's a neat part of our kind of a history, that first jet bridge and bringing that first jet on board. It's funny, we have pictures, along our world headquarters of like that jet bridge. It was so iconic initially back in the 50s and getting it started, so people can walk out onto the airplane without getting wet. And if you recall the old Pan Am building, which was the Delta terminal in New York, that cantilever roof was really designed to do the same thing. Sans that, where you can walk outside and not get the elements on you. So that I think our method with the jetway was an easier method, although it didn't inspire the Starship Enterprise like the Pan Am building did.
No. Well, thank you so much.
It's amazing as soon as you take a jetway away from someone these days, the complaints you hear right away.
Oh man!
Oh, I have to walk outside on stairs. Like,
take the bus.
That was the romantic jet era back then. That's how it was. But we digress.
Yeah,
we do indeed.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much. I know you got a lot to talk about today. I'm gonna let you take the reins here with the presentation. I know Brian talked about it. We're gonna have lots of questions in the box. We'll try and monitor those, but we'll be here on the sidelines, and we'll let you guys run with it.
Well, thanks, Troy. Appreciate it. First and foremost, thanks for the invitation. It's really great to speak with everybody here today, and I appreciate the efforts of NGPA in general and our ongoing relationship over the years. We've been proud partners of the winter warm-up. I think we all wish we were there right now. You've joined us actually in a leadership meeting some time ago. We're happy to participate in things like scholarship and sponsorship efforts. And it's great to be able to just call on you as a really great resource. I know we're going to talk to Eob and Kelvin here in a little bit. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I'm a civilian pilot. That path was kind of well worn by maybe a lot of the folks in the audience here. I was a flight instructor in the Dallas area. I'm a freight dog. I flew twin Cessnas, 400 series Cessnas and Barons out of Love Field, and went through the regionals. I went through Trans-States Airlines, mostly in St. Louis, a little bit in New York on the ATR, Jetstream 32 and 41. Going back a little bit further, I went to Embry-Riddle out in Prescott, Arizona, and I tell people this all the time. When I got out there, I ran out of money in like 15 minutes. And I was smart enough to know that if I had left college to go to flight school, I probably wouldn't make my way back to college. So I got a degree in aviation studies and management at Riddle, and then started really flying in earnest after I got out. I began with Delta actually back on the ramp in Philadelphia, which is my hometown, in 1989. And I dug up something I'm going to share with everybody here. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's my original ramp ID. And I need more product, I think, if I'm want my hair looking like that again. But working in the ramp, actually Philadelphia was small enough. It was a really unique experience for me. I wore the poor station manager out, and I got a chance to work in the ramp, the ticket counter, the gates. I worked in the Sky Club, baggage service. I worked in cabin service, cleaning airplanes for some time. I had spent some time in reservation sales and marketing support, the whole time building my flight time. And I know there's a lot of familiar stories with the membership here that they're doing a lot of those same things. I found myself, if I was working the night shift at Res, for example, I'd do flight instruction during the day. If I was day shift at Res, I'd be doing night freight or something like that. I had such glamorous aviation experiences in my time at the airport, like working in open D ice buckets in the freezing rain in Philly in the wintertime up there, or wearing a shoulder length glove to retrieve a ring out of a laboratory from a distraught customer coming to us asking to save the day. I remember a really neat event where I wore Mickey Mouse ears on a flight we used to fly from Philly to Orlando, because a 6-year-old girl was so excited about her trip. She came up to tell me she was wearing ears. And I said something to the effect, I wish I had a pair of ears. And she went back and got me a pair, and I worked the flight with these Mickey Mouse ears. All those experiences, I think part of that is it just kind of keeps you drawn into this business, but it also made me a better employee, to be quite honest with you. And in the long run, made me a better pilot as well. And I got to tell you, the stops along my management career often tied to those different experiences. So for everybody listening, I think a part of this whole thing is you're a sum of all your experiences and all your parts. And for me, those experiences, and quite honestly, not like planned intentionally that way, but all those experiences really made my journey to the flight deck really impactful for me. I left the company. I left Delta in the mid 90s when I was, I ended up flying more freight than I had really time in the day. And then I had to leave the company to go to the regionals. And I got back to flight operations in 99, and I've been with flight operations ever since. If we can jump to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the company here. Like I said, Troy, you got some really good foundational stuff, but there's a quote here by our founder, C.E. Woolman. And we've got a number of guiding principles in our company, and determination is one of them. That's what this quote kind of shares about. We've got to be determined to be the best we can do. And if we can focus on that, nothing really can stop us. Another quote by C.E. Woolman that's well known is, always put yourself on the other side of the counter. And that was his way of asking us all to put ourselves in the shoes of our customers. And we'll talk a little bit more about culture, but let's go to the next slide real quick. And we can just stop on this one quickly because you covered a lot of this already, Troy. Back in 1925 with 18 airplanes at the time, we were the largest privately owned fleet in the world. I think that's kind of cool. And if you think about today, I think we have more than 18 operational spares supporting our organization. As you see on the slide there, we're a result of significant mergers over the years, like most of the major airlines. Chicago and Southern in the 50s, Northeast Airlines in the 70s, Western in the 80s, Pan Am in the 90s, and Northwest, of course, most recently in the 2000s. And I think it's important. I think it's important for us to kind of recognize that these mergers kind of represent our kind of a diverse corporate history and our heritage. And I think the same way about our employees. Each of us brings something unique to the table. So my experience, as I shared with everybody here, I'm not the only person that went through flight instruction, flying checks, to go into the regionals, but my stops and all the things that I did along the way are unique to my experience. So even though I might be sitting next to somebody on the flight deck that has the same experience, we bring something different. Same true with anybody that goes through a corporate route or a military route. Even though they might look the same, they're really unique. So it's not just our professional experiences that are unique, but we are as unique as each of us are as individuals. And I think all of that is really the definition of diversity, and that really strengthens the fabric of our organization from an employee standpoint. And we talked about 75,000 employees, 300 destinations in 50 countries, all great things. It might look a little smaller right now because of COVID. I think we all know that, and we're looking forward to kind of springboarding forward. And we'll talk a little bit about our recovery and future plans here. Let's hit the next slide and go back to that culture piece. It says here, our culture fuels our success. And I think that any company worth their salt has a vibrant culture that's unique to that organization. We have some really great peers in the industry that are great companies that have really unique and good cultures there. And for us, what really defines that for us is, as you can see on the slide there, commitment to our core values, the rules of the road, those 5 characteristics that are really important. We try to do everything, interacting with each other, how we conduct our business with honesty, respect, perseverance, servant leadership, and actually every employee, and I know it's going to look backwards on the screen there, but every employee gets this book, Rules of the Road, to talk about those 5 characteristics. And actually, we go a little bit further. There's another book that we give everybody called The Way We Fly. I know that's a little backwards, but it goes a little bit more into depth about how we should be carrying ourselves as professionals, as human beings, and how we work with each other and how we work with our customers and the folks on our teams. You see there as well, we do have a very strong focus in our communities. We take our role as a corporate citizen very seriously. And you see some of the foundational kind of platform of that engagement, which is the environment, equity, and education. And there's just one example in each of those. We're heavily involved in community affairs. You can see in the background of that slide, our BCRF JET, Breast Cancer Research Foundation, heavily engaged in the American Cancer Society. We're one of the largest financial donors, not just corporately, but individuals as well. Habitat for Humanity, it's one of our most fought after opportunities for volunteers to go out and contribute. The American Red Cross, I think we're the largest blood donor to that organization, and we have been for a number of years. Very proud of our employee group to do that. Our wing flight, Women Inspiring Our Next Generation, loading an airplane up of young women to introduce them to opportunities in aviation, and the entire flight, dispatch, loading, flying the airplane, maintenance, all done by professionals, professional women at Delta Airlines. Playground building through Kaboom, the USO Delta Military Lounge, Black Lives Matter movement. These things are all a part of us as a community. And the thing I love about these efforts is that it's the people that are involved in these things that really drives the success. Now, we have a corporate mission, and that corporate mission succeeds because of the people and the commitment of our people to these organizations. Super proud of that. Let's jump a little bit ahead and talk a little bit kind of what's going on right now. If you don't mind, we'll hit the next slide for a COVID response. And we all had to do this. And so there's things that I think are unique to Delta, and there's things that look the same among airlines and businesses, honestly, around the world. That first bullet point on that, I think, is super important. We implemented a high-risk pay protection for all employees. High risk means that you may be at risk or high risk because of your health, or, and this is where it's super unique for Delta Airlines, is that if you're caring for a parent, if a partner or a spouse is also at risk, we paid you to stay home. We wanted you to stay healthy. We took you out of harm's way, and we took that concern off the plate as a way for us to really kind of manage through COVID to keep our employees safe. And that was one of the like any good company, focusing on our people, making sure that we serve them as best we can. We also stood up a testing program that I think is second to none. We started testing early on. In fact, we have more testing at Delta Airlines than we actually currently using. We have that much capacity in all of our bases. We have at-home testing opportunities. We encourage all our employees to test at least once a week. We have some employees that test more often than that. The idea here is that the more we do that, the more we offer things like PPE that, again, become now commonplace, but masks, gloves, cleaning wipes. We issued thermometers to all of our pilots. We had safety vests on the flight deck for walk-arounds. Everybody got a safety vest, so we didn't have to share those. Deep cleaning, not only in the aircraft, but on the flight deck, so in partnership with our airport customer service folks, with our tech ops folks. All of that effort really saved lives because we minimized the spread of COVID. And we had as it says in the slide here, a robust contact tracing protocol that we still do today. And quite honestly, it costs us resources when we identify all the folks that may have been in contact with a known source, and we quarantine or isolate all those folks because it's the right thing to do. So we burn through some crew resources, but in the long run, it's the smart thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. Now, we talked a little bit earlier on the slide, we had 75,000 employees. This is an amazing number. More than 40,000 employees took some sort of unpaid leave of varying lengths throughout 2020. So if you think of the organization size of 75,000 people, you can see the level of participation and commitment that the employees had to this company to help it survive. So certainly very proud of our team to do that. We had 17 pilots placed on non-flying status. We were very proud to say that we had 0 involuntary furloughs, and 1,800 pilots participated in an early out program in 2020. We've got a few more that are going to take part of that program in 2021 as well. Lastly, I want to just throw out there that Georgia is now doing mass vaccination here in the state, and we're one of 4 mass vaccination sites. And because of our connections at the state and local level, and because of our logistical prowess, we are the largest vaccination site, mass vaccination site in the state of Georgia. And we're doing it right at the museum. Troy, you mentioned the museum. We're using that parking lot and those facilities there to help out our fellow citizens here in the state of Georgia. Let's jump to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about something beyond flight operations, but I think this is an important slide because this really shows to everybody here on this conference that we're investing in our future. And despite COVID, our infrastructure investments continued and actually accelerated in some ways because we had so much less traffic in the airports. LA and Salt Lake City are 2 good examples. New York, LaGuardia, but significant investments in the airports you see there on the screen. And what we're trying to do is we look at every aspect of our customer, and going back to that C.E. Woolman quote, putting ourselves in their shoes, how can we positively affect their entire travel ribbon? Not just when we greet them at the airport, but before they ever get out here, going through the app, the concierge-like experience through the app, how we treat them on the airplane, making that a positive close to their experience, so that when we are engaged with our customers, it's really a travel experience. It's not just a commodity. So I know we tend to focus, especially as operators and pilots, on what we do because it really needs that kind of focus. But if you take a little broader look out there, and again, my experience at Delta and other departments shows us how important that this type of investment is. And so I want to bring that out there and be happy to talk about some of this in the Q&A. Let's jump to the next slide here. We've got some fleet. Anytime we talk about airplanes, every pilot's ears perk up a little bit. We did accelerate some of our planned fleet simplification. There was a little bit of surprise in there when we announced the 777 retiring, but we closed the books on the 88 and 90, the 737-700, and then looking a little bit further forward, our 76 ERs and the 717, the airplane I currently fly here in Atlanta, as well as the 200 series RJs. We actually, I don't think a lot of people know this, but we actually were taking aircraft deliveries throughout 2020. And we'll continue to take deliveries through 2021. And the right half of that slide, you see deliveries through 26 in every one of those fleets. That totals over 200 airplanes. So the delivery schedule is robust. We've minimized or reduced our fleet's complexity from, I think, 11 fleet types down to 8. What you don't see there on the 2026 slide there is the 737. That's going to be a long-term player in our fleet as well. So again, taking advantage of COVID in the sense that we were continuing our investments and simplifying our operation. Everybody needs goalposts. Everybody needs to know where they're running. And our goals were very much simplified in 2020 to get through COVID. Number 1 was take care of our people. Number 2 was we had to make sure that we minimized cash burn. We were at a point when we first got into the worst, darkest of days $100 million a day. We're working toward zero, but we've been between 10 and $15 million a day for a month or two, actually more than that. We were about that at the end of last year. So that was something we had to do, was staunch the bleeding through the worst of COVID. And the third thing that we really focused on was to do no long-term harm. So let's care for the organization, the enterprise, the people in it, to get through the worst of it and position ourselves to pivot, not only in recovery, but then back to growth. And so I think we're in a great place to do that. Let's go one more slide. I think this is my last slide. This is flight operations, kind of a big picture. Again, I think most people are familiar with our basing structure. You can see the number of pilots. I think most everybody can interpret the fleet type. 73N is the 737 next gen. The 763 is the 300 series. 767. There's a 764, which is actually the 76400. Everything else I think makes sense. Our network is structured to support, our basing and categories are structured to support our network. And our network group, in my opinion, is the best in the business. They are really good at understanding macro and micro economies so that we can apply our resources, upgauging, downgauging, whatever equipment we have to support the revenue generation as best we can. Now, the great thing about that is we are super nimble, but as an operating division, it challenges us, our in-flight colleagues, tech ops and ACS, because as that hoop moves around, as I think most people on this this call know, it takes a lot of lead time to get a pilot in position through training. It takes a lot to get an airplane or a category moved from base to base. So keeping up with our network folks is a challenge, one I enjoy because they do such great work for us. Now, I know everybody wants to talk about hiring and when we'll start, so I'll let Eob take it over. So I want to pass it to my friend and colleague Eob McConan to talk about that.
Thank you, Patrick, very much. Hi, Brian. Hi, Troy. Hi, everybody on the call. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Eob McConan. I am the new manager of pilot selection, having taken over Captain Barry Holmes, who took an early retirement last year. So I am really excited to be here and sit and talk with everybody. I may have had a chance to talk with you at some of our different recruiting and career events, Palm Springs, the NGPA Career Fair last year, which I'm really bummed that we can't be there this year, but I'm looking forward to hopefully next year and more normal times. To give you a little bit about my background, it's similar to Patrick's. It's just I didn't work the ramp and have to go through all the de-icing stuff that he had to go through. But I am a civilian. I went through the civilian ranks, the civilian route, I should say. I was a graduate of Embry-Riddle in Daytona Beach. I was a flight instructor there for several years. Worked for a regional airline, and I've been at Delta now since 2007, flying different aircraft and having an opportunity to do different roles within flight operations, like recruiting, and now most recently as the new manager of pilot selection. So if we can go to the next slide. So I just want to go through real quick our general requirements and the FAA requirements for pilot selection at Delta Airlines. And you can find all this information. I won't read through all of it, but you can find all this information on Airline Apps, which is the portal that we use to accept applications as well as pilot recommendations. But it's pretty straightforward. It's the same as it always has been in terms of the general requirements, the FAA requirements, and our flight time requirements. So we'll move on to the next slide. And as everybody is, I'm sure, dying to know, is when is Delta going to start hiring again? And I don't have a date for you, when we're going to resume hiring, but we do anticipate hiring as the recovery takes hold and our customers are starting to feel more and more comfortable with flying again. As you saw on the earlier slide, we had 1,800 pilots last year take a retirement package, and we know we still have pilots this year and for the next several years that are going to be hitting the retirement age. And so as the recovery takes hold and as we start moving forward, we know there's going to come a point where we're going to have to start hiring as we return back to normal. All our applications, like I said earlier, and recommendations are done through the Airline Apps. If you're not familiar with that system, airlineapps.com, you can find all the general requirements and all the requirements that we saw on the previous slide. But also, if you have recommendations that is the only thing that you need to do to have an internal and external recommendation is just to go through the airline apps portal in the system and have, you know, somebody who's referring you fill out that link or send you the link that I think is on the addendum page. But that's all they need to do if you have somebody who you want to write a letter of recommendation for you. So I want to save some time for, I know I'm sure there's going to be a lot more questions and answers at the end of this presentation, but for the latest and greatest information, if you haven't been following our Delta Airlines pilot recruiting Facebook page, I encourage you to go check it out. That's where we also share the latest and greatest information. And also, if you have questions, we are more than happy to interact and answer the questions as best as we know it. My goal and the goal of this team of pilot selection is when Patrick tells me to go, we want to be ready to go to start welcoming everybody back in when we get to that point of resuming hiring. So that's pretty much, it's short and quick with the dirty because we want to save time for questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Kelvin Mason.
All right, thanks, Eob, and good afternoon, everyone. Great to spend a few minutes with you this afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Kelvin Mason, and I manage the Propel program at Delta. I was hired here in 1998, so I'm coming up on my 23-year Delta anniversary, and obviously I've been here for a lot of the ups and downs of the airline industry over the last 2 decades. The majority of my career has been spent on the HR side, supporting the different divisions at Delta, but I've always had kind of a soft spot for the flight ops group and the pilot team at Delta. So a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to move from HR to actually being a member of the support staff here in flight ops, managing the Propel program. So we're going to move to the next slide, please. All right, just to talk briefly about sort of the history and structure of the program. So Propel was launched in 2018 as the first true pilot career pathway to a major carrier. So they had been a fairly common entity among the regionals, but Delta was the first to launch something that was specifically intended as a pathway program directly to a major carrier. And in terms of the structure of Propel, there's 3 pillars to it. So the first one is campus, which is our partnership with a number of universities with high quality aviation programs. Students at those schools who meet certain eligibility criteria, which in general is being a junior and meeting certain flight training requirements as of that point in their scholastic career. Had the opportunity to apply for Propel, and if successful, they actually receive a CJO. So they, as a college student, actually receive a conditional job offer to become a Delta pilot. Of course, there are still several steps they have to go through before reaching that point. So they agree to stay at their school and flight instruct until they hit their 1,000 hours. And then they would transition on to either a Delta connection carrier or fly in the U.S. military to build time and experience and eventually transition on to Delta. The second pillar to Propel is called company, and this is something that we offer to our own internal employees. So for example, a mechanic or a flight attendant or an airport customer service agent, someone who's had an interest in transitioning their career and moving into the pilot ranks, we have a similar pathway option for them. So they have 3 years of service and they're in good standing and have their private pilot certificate and at least 100 hours of total flight time, then they can apply for this similar pathway type option. They have to apply, go through a testing program and an interview process. And again, if selected, then they also receive a CJO to become a Delta pilot. In the case of those Delta employees, we send them to one of our partner flight schools to finish their ratings and build time as an instructor. And then they too would move on to a Delta connection carrier before eventually joining us back at Delta. And then finally, community is the third pillar to Propel. And this is our strategy around encouraging young people to pursue careers in aviation. So we spend a lot of time going out to high schools that are near our hub city locations, as well as our partner universities, talking to students about opportunities within aviation. We also partner with diversity-focused organizations like yourself at NGPA, as well as WIA and OBAP and others who share the same goals that we have of sort of inspiring that next generation. Next slide, please. Okay, so currently with Propel, we have partnerships with 11 universities across the country. We are currently in discussions with a number of other schools and hope to announce new partnerships happening later this year. With our current college participants, about 20% of them are currently flying at regionals. Our first college participant should actually reach Delta next year. So that's going to be an exciting time for us when that actually happens. And the number you see there at the bottom, 42 months. So that is the time frame that our college and our company participants need to spend from their first day of indoc at a regional carrier to the point where we would bring them back to Delta. So we commit to them that within 42 months or less from that date, they will join us. And I think that is it from, oh yeah, we got one more slide here. This is just a map of our current Propel partner universities. And you'll see, some of the larger names in collegiate aviation, like, both Embry-Riddle campuses, as well as UND, and then a number of other programs that are somewhat smaller, but are either close to one of our Delta pilot bases or are otherwise regionally significant to Delta. And again, we do have additional partner universities coming on online soon, and where we're hoping to announce that here in the near future. And I think that concludes my slide, so I will hand it back to Brian and Troy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelvin. And thank you to the entire Delta team there, Patrick and Eob and Kelvin, for giving a view into the world of Delta Airlines as it's been over this past year, dealing with the pandemic, the culture that has always existed at Delta Airlines and will continue to exist post-COVID. Culture is a great thing that luckily is not changing across many of the airlines, and especially at Delta Airlines. Patrick, I have to talk about what you mentioned. I wrote it down here, and I absolutely love the story you mentioned about the Mickey ears. The fact that to connect with that young traveler you had on a flight to wear the Mickey ears. There's so much, as myself as a pilot, that I often find that a lot of pilots don't connect as much as they should with the customers that they have traveling with them. It's such a great part of our job, being able to make that connection and be a part of their life, not just getting them from point A to point B, but actually taking part in the joy that they're going to take part in, or the sorrow that they're going to take part in a loss of life as well. So we have such a great big aspect or effect on customers, not just getting them from point A to point B. So I love that story.
I tell you, a lot of people come to us. A lot of people actually approach us as pilots because they want to engage us, right? And I think pilots really underestimate that impact, to your point. And I think it's true with our colleagues as well. I try to talk to every new hire class that's here, and I tell them on your walk around, talk to that guy in the bin, right? They're great colleagues, professionals, and we're in this thing together. And quite honestly, as professionals, I think a lot of times we underestimate, and I think for a while I did as well, we underestimate our impact on others. If you intentionally try to inspire people, you will do an amazing job, because what happens is that each of us inspire people quite often accidentally. And if you think about it and maybe try to be more intentional as you're mentoring a younger pilot, or trying to reach out to folks to get them interested in some part of aviation. We to your point, Ryan, we have an amazing impact on the people that we travel with, people we work with, and the people that look up to us to help them along the way.
And not only that direct impact you have on that person, but they can have such a great impact on you as well, and can make you enjoy your job that much more. That's one of the things that I love to connect with people while working. I love flying airplanes, but I like people even more, I like to say. So I love that connection. So thank you for sharing that story. It's a cool one. So thank you again for that presentation. We have tons of questions coming in for all of our attendees here. Again, thank you so much for joining us. You can use the Q&A box. It's down at the bottom of your screens. We have over 21 questions, actually like 26. We've answered a couple of them already in the Q&A box. Also, we're going to try this again. Last week, we did this with our previous Up in the Air, and people were hitting the raise hand function a bit too much here. We will also take a couple of live questions. So if any one of our attendees would like to ask a question directly to the Delta team, I'm going to lower the one hand that's up now. So if anyone would like to actually ask a live question, hit the raise hand function. Don't worry, you won't come on camera. It'll just be unmuting your microphone and you'll be able to ask the entire Delta team here a question. What we ask for these questions that you do ask is that they're general. Make sure that all of our attendees, over 330 live attendees in the event right now, it's going to be something that they want to hear. I know a lot of you have personal questions. There's places to do that, such as the Delta Pilot Recruitment Facebook page, as well as some other avenues that you can go through to get very personalized questions about your resume asked. So I'm going to kick it off with one that's going to be fun. Eob, since you went through some slides there and everyone's interested in hiring, there's one that came through the question and answer box. You need to dispel a rumor. What is the truth, Eob, to Delta hiring 1,500 pilots by the end of this year? That's the rumor that's gone on out there. What say you?
Well, I'm going to give you the standard answer is I can't confirm or deny that. I can't confirm or deny that rumor, right? I think, like I said earlier, it really depends. As we're moving forward, as we look forward to, recovering from COVID, we look towards 2021, 2022 and beyond. We'll start to get a better idea and a sense of the direction and where we're going. And based off of that will really help us determine, okay, when do we start hiring and how many people we need to hire from that point. And it takes into account, what are we targeting, for the future, and also taking into account those retirements and what's that magic number, where do we want to be? And so once we get that info, then we can start getting a better idea and a handle of, when hiring will start and how many we will need to hire.
I want to add on a little bit, Eob. Thank you for that. There's a couple things. Again, we talked about we have to get ahead of these things as we plan. These decisions we make take time to implement. So we're looking at the summer of 22 as we put into place our fleet plan, all of our other resources, employees in every division, including flight operations, and then we also have to look at 23. So we have an expectation that we're going to be somewhere between 85 and 90% of 2019 baseline by 22, and by 23 somewhere between 95, maybe even back to 2019 baseline. So we have to plan for that. But as Eob said earlier, our customers are going to tell us when they're ready to get there. So we have to lead that by enough. And there's one more unique thing I think to Delta is that we still are blocking the middle seat. We're one of the last airlines to do that. So we have a pretty big lever to increase the capacity on our network by opening that middle seat block. And we're still talking about when that'll happen. So we're not going to need, a lot of pilots, a lot of airplanes at, a time when we hit that. But if you think about it, that's almost a third of our seats that are currently not being, that are not available to the traveling public right now, that will make available. That'll bridge us a little bit through the summer, at least, of 21. And Eob and the team are going to be ready, like I said, to have that infrastructure in place so that when we do get it, we'll go gangbusters.
Cool. I just had to razz you with that question, Eob. I wanted to start off with, I know you don't have any set time frame, timeline, or numbers, but I just had to give it to you. Thanks for being so.
You were salivating since early this morning, ready to just lob one at me or something. So
correct. That's correct. Troy, you've got some questions.
Yeah. So I've been looking at the question box. I'm going to bring up some of the questions we have here on the Propel program. So I'm kind of going to ask these. I think most of these questions are coming from the perspective of students in college right now. So my first question would be, are you guys planning on expanding this Propel program to any new campuses anytime soon?
Yes, so we are in discussions now with some new partner universities. We're not yet at a point of being able to announce who they are, but hoping to do so later this year.
Okay, great. So one of the questions here was, well, the specific question is, you guys are on the Embry-Riddle campus in Daytona, correct?
Correct.
There. The specific question here from Omar is, if I already have an ATP license, will that disqualify me from the program? So maybe talk a little bit about, like, what are the initial qualifications to get into the program? What stages can you join the Propel program?
Yeah, and I think I took a peek at that question in the chat. I think the question was that he's attending Embry-Riddle worldwide, but received his flight training through ATP.
Yeah.
So in a scenario like that, the way our program is structured, it's driven off of that Part 141 program that's done at the two Embry-Riddle campuses at Daytona and Prescott. And so because that's not offered through Embry-Riddle worldwide, then unfortunately someone pursuing that route would not be eligible to come through the Propel program. But something we say all the time is that Propel is just one way to a Delta flight deck. So certainly we still have the opportunity to apply off the street through our pilot selection group.
Yeah, great.
A big question that's coming in too here, and it's really evident of the times now. Currency, obviously, currency is an issue for so many people who were, say, at an airline like Compass, at an airline like Trans-States, Patrick, where you had your start, that unfortunately shut down, and there was nowhere for those pilots to go after that loss of work there in terms of the airline environment. So, do you anticipate that Delta might have to implement any type of currency requirement before they'd be eligible for hire, or will there be exceptions made for folks who were not able to get back into flying post a job loss during COVID?
I'm going to let EO jump in on the currency piece, because there's, as everybody knows who's going through this this exercise in our career, there's currency, there's recency, there's proficiency, and then there's a level of competitiveness as well, right? So those are all complex aspects of it. But I think it's important to know that everybody's going through this. And when we look at applications, we all know that wherever you are in the pipeline, COVID is affecting that. When we talk about recency, I've had conversations in the past with pilots that are interested in coming to Delta. I'd say, I have this opportunity to be a chief pilot, but if I do this chief pilot gig, I can't fly as much. So what's more important? And that's always that balance of being, having a very diverse profile from experience, showing leadership opportunities. So we don't just look at currency in total hours. But Eob, any more insight for that specific question?
No, I think you're exactly right. In terms of, we know that COVID has had a really disparate impact on everybody's career and progression. And so that's some of the conversations that we're going to start looking at. And we know that it's impacted everybody, but we just need to sit down and look at and see what makes the most sense and what's right. I mean, even within our own pilots, we have pilots who haven't been flying for a year. And so we understand that, we get that. But I think, one of the things that we're doing now is we're just starting to pivot and start to have those conversations and kind of sit down and kind of map it out and say, okay, what makes sense? What's the right thing to do? So all that to say, hopefully, we'll be able to put more information, as we work through that, we'll be able to share more of that in the future.
Sure, and I mean, every airline, it's not just going to be a problem at Delta. It's going to be a problem across the board, just because of this is nothing like we've ever really experienced before. This inability to go elsewhere in this kind of time. We are going to go to a live question. Aaron DeWitt, thank you for raising your hand. Welcome to the webinar. You can go ahead and unmute your microphone, Aaron, and ask your question to the Delta team. Thanks for joining us, Aaron.
Hello, thank you for putting this on. My question. How is Delta preparing to defend and or attack against the threat of ultra low cost carriers in the future?
How about I take a stab at that? That has been a threat. That business model has been in our industry. And actually, I think in the long run, it benefits the traveling public, but it also, I think, helps make legacy carriers better. I remember when Southwest took over AirTran, and of course AirTran had a hub in Atlanta here, and a lot of the industry folks that were looking at it were saying that this is the attack on Fortress Atlanta from a Delta perspective. They can't compete low cost, and we actually did very well. And we ended up having a great kind of symbiotic relationship with Southwest, and of course other airlines here in Atlanta, where their discipline and their business model, not just Southwest, but other low-cost carriers, keeps us on our toes. And it really helps us highlight the differentiation in our product. Operational excellence. You get on an airplane, you're going to get where you're going to go, and you're going to get there on time with your bags the vast majority of our time. We talked about culture and our people. We think that is the biggest strength of our carrier. So unless a low-cost carrier hires all Delta pilot or Delta employees, they're going to have an uphill battle. But quite honestly, Aaron, I think it makes us better. I can speak for Delta Airlines that it's made us better in the past. And it's going to keep us sharp going forward.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm going to pivot just a little bit back to the pilot hiring question a little bit. We have a question here specifically, and I'll have a two-part question on this one, follow-up. specifically about a master's degree. Like, what kind of role does that play in an application for being a pilot at Delta?
Can you say that again? Repeat the question, Troy.
How does a master's degree affect potential for hire?
Master's degree. So we always say, and I know I speak in general terms because it really is, we always look at the whole applicant, right?
Yeah.
You know, we look at the education, we look at your work history. It's really the whole package, whether, you know, leadership roles inside, outside, you know, of flying. So I can't say that, you know, a master's degree is a guaranteed, you know, it always put, you know, that's the number one priority, or that gives you all the, you know, the high ranking or whatever. It really just depends. It really depends on the path, your background, and other things that you have to get you to where you are today. That's what we're kind of looking at. We're trying to get a picture of you and how you got to where you are today, and the decisions of why you made those decisions to get to where you are. So, you know, it's a master's degree. I can't say it will or it doesn't hurt. It just really is. It's what you're doing, what you're thinking, and why you chose that route.
So
Yeah, it won't hurt you for sure.
right.
Yeah.
So that's my follow-up question then. So we've got a handful of people here in the Q&A. We got one who's an air traffic controller talking about what would a person who's learning how to fly be looking to do for themselves to stand out and prepare themselves for a job at Delta? What can you do as you're training and as you begin your career to stand out and prepare for the interview with Delta to get an invite?
Yeah, so, you know, one of the things that, you know, when I would speak to people at the different career fairs or recruiting fair, job fairs, you know, really it's what are you doing to differentiate yourself against with everybody else that's standing in the room that is standing in line that's interested in that, right? Are you taking advantage? You know, we know everybody says, hey, I go to work, I fly my airplane safely, you know, safely transport your customers, and that absolutely, that's great. But, you know, if you have the ability and the opportunity, are you taking advantage of other opportunities to grow and learn outside of just flying? If it's leadership opportunities, like, you know, Patrick mentioned earlier, is it a chief pilot opportunity? Is it an opportunity to be an instructor, a mentor pilot? You know, recruiting. What is it? What are you doing to grow and learn and enhance yourself? And so that's really, you know, what helps give people a leg up. Now, I know, you know, during hard times, not everybody can apply. There's not very many opportunities to be an instructor or a line check pilot. But it's really those inside and outside the communities, those leadership opportunities that really can help you differentiate yourself. At least in our eyes.
Yeah. And leadership takes on a lot of different roles. You know, it's not just being a chief pilot. There's a lot of ways to demonstrate leadership that aren't a title.
Absolutely.
Spot on. The only thing I want to add to this, and I tell this to student pilots all the way up through ATP pilots and airlines already flying around the world. Be professional from day one. Don't think that you're going to be the professional when you walk into CEO for your job interview. If you act like a professional and every step along the way, that's just, you bake that basic attitude to how you approach your job, how you represent yourself, how you represent the company that hired you. If you carry that along through every step of your journey, then it'll be a no-brainer. And Eob see that, and I'll see that as well. So that's a big part of, to round out all the stuff that Eob said, is look for opportunity to make you a more complete person, because you look a lot like everybody else with all those hours in the logbook. I want to see what looks different.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
Kelvin, a couple of questions we have coming through here. This is kind of in a post-COVID world, full recovery. Delta's back at 100% of flying. Hiring is happening regularly. Are there any thoughts or talks about what Delta is going to do down the road when the pilot shortage becomes a real thing again for airlines? Is there thoughts with Propel to maybe open that up to individuals who want a career change, who are already working professionals, and any thought process into bringing people in for a career change type program to get into flying and ultimately lead to a job at Delta?
Yeah, so those were some discussions we were starting to have really just before COVID hit. So a lot of those things kind of got put on the shelf for the time being. But, you know, the program as structured, or as initially put out there, includes really a pathway for college aviation students at a select number of universities, as well as, you know, people within our own employee population. But there's certainly a number of other ways that people can become a pilot. So we have looked at other options, and we'll continue to do that in the future.
Cool, thank you. I know there's so many with these different programs that are forming at different airlines. There's so many possibilities of how the pilot shortage can be answered in the future, and it's going to be interesting to see. Well, hopefully, we'll all be smiling in the next year or two with how well the airlines are doing again, and it'll be interesting to see how we all kind of mold into the new ways of getting people in the seats and getting people really enthusiastic about aviation again from the flight deck side. So thanks for covering that. Troy, did you have something?
I mean, I
have
kind
another
of, this
one.
isn't a question from the question box. We've touched on a lot of things here. I kind of have a kind of a broad question. You guys can answer as deeply as you want to. I'm just curious what you guys think is Delta as a whole, as an airline, and then in flight operations in the pilot world there. What has COVID taught you guys that you're going to carry into the future as an airline?
I'll start. It helped me, like personally and professionally, really examine my priorities. Operationally, we were, burning $100 million a day is a big pile of cash, right? And that can distract you. And so it's my job. It was a job of this leadership team to be able to operate, whether it was 1 flight a day or 6,000 flights a day, to do that safely. So really to focus priority. It really helped me personally connect with my family and friends, because I think we all know or have personally had, been affected by this, whether it's sickness or a loss, unfortunately. From a company perspective, again, I think it's kind of like the saying, airspeed you don't have, or altitude above you or runway behind you. If we go about our day-to-day job and do so in a disciplined way, when you get into something like COVID, we can pivot to get there quickly. It was hard to get this airline down to the size it is now, but it's going to be even harder to bring it back up again. And as we do that, we're going to have to, like I say, go back to priorities. What's important to us? What's important to our customers? Focus on those things and add the other things as necessary when our customer tells us it's right. From a pilot perspective, again, we have enough distractions in the flight deck. Worried about your job, worried about your next paycheck, worried about getting sick, worried about losing your medical, all those things. We think we're really good at compartmentalizing those things. There's some things that we got to work really hard on to not lose focus on that. Yob or Kelvin, anything else to round that out?
Yeah, I was going to say, to me, what stood out was the resiliency of the people at Delta, the resiliency of Delta as a company. Last year when things were just starting, and we went through lockdowns and there was a whole lot of uncertainty. In my mind, I was confident. I knew, because of all the hard work, because of the hard work of the people here and the work that we had done for the previous, however many years, that we were going to come out of this, on the other side. We were going to be smaller. It might be a difficult couple of years, but we were going to come out of this, and we were going to come out of this okay. And just seeing, kind of the things that Patrick touched on, the people that were taking voluntary leaves, the people that were volunteering and stepping up to help, at the airports and the reservation call centers, just company-wide. Just to seeing those people step up, all our employees, our coworkers step up. It was just a really, kind of, I don't want to say comforting feeling, but it gave me that knowledge that, what, we're going to be okay.
We're in the right place.
Cool. Thank you. We have some culture questions, and I won't put you on the spot right away, but I would say from each of you, think about, what do you think is your favorite culture piece at Delta that has made you, I don't know, fall in love with the airline more and more? So I'll go into something else for just a second, but think about that. I'm going to ask that from all of you, as some people are asking, what are your favorite culture pieces? And then maybe, what is the biggest rumor that you need to dispel about Delta that sometimes you'll often get when you meet with people at different events in the past? What is the largest thing that people ask about or are curious about that is just an absolute rumor that you need to dispel? Think about that. While I ask maybe an easier question, Eob, I'm going to kick this your way. I'm lobbing them at you again. A couple questions about CJOs, folks who had conditional job offers in the past. Are you just able to address what the plan is going forward with folks who did not get to start at Delta?
Yeah, so we communicated with we do have a group of CJO holders that we had to pause when we paused hiring last year, and so we're going to be reaching out to them as we start formulating our plan going forward, and as we get a better picture and idea of the time frame, we're going to reach out to them and work with them to figure out what are the steps. There are probably some procedural steps and paperwork steps that we have to go back and do because it's been a while, but we're going to work with them to make sure that we get them up to speed and get them into a class when we do start hiring again. So I've been trying to. My goal is to communicate with them, regularly. We did it last quarter. We'll probably be preparing a communication for them this quarter, just kind of sharing, keeping them in the loop as we go forward. What we're working on and what that plan is, as best as we know it today.
And I know that that's probably not something that has really ever happened before, maybe around September 11th, people who were offered positions at any time then at airlines. So it's such a new area that people are trying to work through. So thanks for addressing that. And I know that those who have those CJOs and who have those questions are comforted knowing that Delta is going to keep them in mind when things do ramp up again, whenever that may be. So the culture stuff, let's see. We'll kick it off to the top boss person here, Patrick. I'm making you start.
So you want me to identify what part of the culture I like the most? Is that what I'm looking at here?
Well, you're in charge, so you get to pick which one you want to answer, and then you can kick off the rest to Eob and Kelvin.
For me, the idea of the Delta family is a term we hear a lot, and some companies use that nomenclature. The fact that I belong to a community is important for me. There's a great story of an employee driving home through downtown Atlanta through a road we call the Connector. Car had some problems and pulled over on the shoulder, and it wasn't a few minutes later somebody pulled in behind them and walked up to the car and said, "What do you need?" And it was just another car. And the driver said, "Well, why did you stop?" And he said, "Well, I saw the Delta sticker on the back of your car. I work for Delta." And it was one of those things where that sounds really small, but the fact that we always have each other's back. Eob talked about the resilience of this airline. There wasn't an employee of this airline that didn't step up to tackle this COVID thing. For me, the culture of this company, the fact that I love coming to work every day because I know who I'm working with, whether it's on the flight line or coming in here to the general offices, that for me is so much more than a cliche. If you spend any time here, that resonates.
Oh, well, thank you. Okay, Kelvin or Eob, do you want to go with the culture portion, or do you want to go with the rumor?
I'll let Kelvin go.
Oh, I'm gonna hit the rumor too. I'm gonna come back to rumor.
Well, I've got a visual aid for my culture answer. So this is a bell that was given to employees back when Delta emerged from bankruptcy. So this was in the mid 2000s. We had an employee event where we all gathered in the Delta museum and rang these miniature stock exchange bells. This was, Delta's coming out of, the kind of the darkest period of our company history. And you had employees hugging each other and high-fiving each other with tears in their eyes. And it was just this testament to, this is a unique place. It's not just another company, that there is truly a family atmosphere, even in a company that has 75,000 employees. So experiencing that and seeing how employees have banded together during COVID, which frankly has been even more devastating to us, from a financial perspective, from what we dealt with in the 2000s, has been just something it's been really incredible to watch.
So I'm going to sound like a copycat, but it really is the same thing. The people here, the culture. Not every day or not every trip is always the perfect. Every trip is always great. Every day is great. You have some hard days, especially when you're dealing with weather. You have a lot on your plate, whatever it is. But the people that you work with, the next day or whatever it is, there's no other place I'd really rather be. I say really, I've been here. Patrick and Kelvin have been here a lot longer than I have, but there's really truly no other place I would rather be, and it's because of the people. I love my job. I love the fact that not only do I get to have fun doing my job, but having fun, with a lot of the people that we work with, whether it's flying or whether it's at our offices here. But I get to do what I love, and I get to have fun doing it with some really great people. And so that makes it, even the hardest days, okay, I can get through that, but the next day, you come back at it and it's a better day. It's a new day. And so that is, yeah, I don't know what else to say besides that.
Ian's telling you that it's hard to work for me. I think that's what I heard. Well,
No,
listen,
I like that. No place I'd rather be. It makes me think of that song. Do you know the song I'm thinking? Da 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 da. Don't make me sing. I'm going to sing now.
Well,
I was going to say, you started singing. So I was like, if you started, you might as well finish.
Give me a microphone and a karaoke background and I will sing any day.
I'm going to hold you to that next time I see you in person.
Oh, done.
I want to add one more piece to this, and that's maybe an incorrect assumption or maybe a rumor. If you look, we wear. This is a unique uniform, right? It's a throwback uniform, and I think a lot of people view our culture, and maybe it's just Flight Ops, as a very conservative, you can't think out of the box, type of organization. And I can tell you, it is far from that. And I might not be the funnest guy at a party, but I know the two guys that are sitting next to me, Eob and Kelvin, certainly are. The fact that we work really hard to understand, I know I have a cisgen view of the world, and I know that. So I got to recognize that and appreciate all the other views, bring those people in, help me be better at what I do. And we're working on that. And we, like I said, this organization is much more inclusive and diverse and all those things than I think people give us credit for. And part of that, quite honestly, is on us. I think we need to do a better job of telling that story. And, I hope people get to see that more, and I'm going to work hard to make sure people see it.
I want to tag on to that, to the rumor part about, people think, because we wear double-breasted jackets and we wear hats. And to me, you see a Delta pilot, you recognize them, coming down the concourse half a mile away. But I don't sleep in my uniform. I don't, wear my hat on my days off. My friends constantly tease me about, monitoring Guard and I'm, Guard is my favorite radio station that I listen to. That is so far from the truth. And anybody who knows me knows that. And I've done just fine here, at Delta. But it sometimes it can come across that way. Kind of what Patrick was saying is that, we're a conservative airline. We take, our image, our taking care of our customers, our company very seriously, right? And that's really important to us. And the uniform, it instills that confidence in our passengers. It's our brand. It's representing our company. And when we all do well, the company does well, we all do well. And we all have a vested interest in doing that and protecting our brand and making sure that Delta succeeds, because we all have an interest in that. But that doesn't mean that we're all sticking them as robots that we, like I said, that we're required to. I have a widget tattoo, emblazoned on my arm on the first day of NDOC, and all that. So it is. It's not. We work hard, but we also have fun.
Guys, I appreciate you guys saying that, because, like I said, my partner flies for Delta, and I've seen that too. And I've seen I work for another airline out there, and I see the differences. And the one thing I know about Delta is it is true, the family aspect there. And then the second thing is that Delta is a tenacious airline that will tackle anything that they set in front of them. That is set in front of them, whether it's a challenge or they're trying something new, they will go for it full force. And I say that because Brian asked me to close out. Delta is a diamond sponsor for NGPA, one of the first airlines to step in and join us as we started hosting our career fairs and standing there with our community. That's it's important to us. I have a lot of friends at Delta who are part of the LGBTQ community, and they have great things to say about Delta, and we're proud to have an airline like Delta be a sponsor and stand by us and our community. So that means a lot to us. So a big thanks from NGPA to you guys for doing that, for joining us, for taking the time to be with us here today.
And I know I
wrap
have
out
to
with
say
one
it,
more thing,
Beth
but Brian's
Poole,
already taken my microphone from me. So.
I am. I'm taking it from you. I know Beth Poole's in the background, so I just want to say thank you to Beth as well for always being such a staunch supporter for NGPA. Many people know Beth.
Yeah, see the architect
and for
here
organizing this this presence here today as well. And just what you were talking about, Eob, being proud of where you work, being proud and representing the brand identity that your airline is. Another thing that a lot of pilots sometimes I think have that I've run into over the years, they're afraid to be proud of where they work because they feel that by doing so, they're going to be made fun of, or they're going to be those. At the airline that I work for, we call it juicers, blue juicers. I'm sure you can figure out which airline that is. Yeah, so being proud of where you work is a good thing, and it contributes to your brand identity. It contributes to the morale at the company, and it contributes to your success. And there's no better airline out there to show success than Delta. So, like Troy said, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Anything else from your team? We have other questions that we haven't hit, but is there anything that you wanted to end with before we cut things off? We want to be respectful of your time.
Well, I'll throw out. I opened with thank you for the invitation. Thanks for asking us to be a part of your community. I appreciate what you bring to Delta as well. This, I think any good relationship is a symbiotic one where we can both benefit, and we certainly do. And so thanks for that. I'm looking forward to continuing this ongoing relationship. And I want to thank Eob and Kelvin and Beth. You can't see her off camera here, for really driving us forward as well. I appreciate that insight. And again, I want to thank everybody joining us today. And really my message to you is love what you do. Love the journey as much as the destination. If you hate the journey, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to like the destination as much as you think you do. These jobs are great. Aviation's a great community. Be in it for the right reason.
No truer words. So again, as Troy said, thank you for being a diamond level sponsor of NGPA. We certainly appreciate it. To all of our attendees today, thank you for attending. We hope you continue to hang out with us almost every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time here at our NGPA Up in the Air webinar series. We'll be taking a break next week. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Be safe out there, folks, next Wednesday. But we'll be back on March 24th. That's another Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern as we sit down with our friends at United Airlines to talk about things that are up in the air. Don't forget to head to ngpa.org, hit the join now button up top. We would love to have your support as a member, or you can text NGPA to 44321 to support our organization, support our scholarship programs. If we got a $5 donation from everyone on the call today, we'd give away another private pilot scholarship. So we really appreciate the support. We appreciate you talking about the Up in the Air webinar series. Go ahead.
Be more like Delta and support NGPA.
I like it. I like it. So to the Delta team, Patrick, Eob, Kelvin, thank you so much for being here with us today. On behalf of our entire board of directors, our executive leadership team, Troy and myself, our great NGPA operations coordinator, Luke, who's here with us, all of our volunteers and our over 2,500 members. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Continue to take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you in 2 weeks, everybody, at the next Up in the Air webinar series. From everyone at NGPA, have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.